Lesson 45, User Forms. In this lesson, we're going to talk about creating custom dialog boxes by using a user form. This allows you to design your own dialog box. It's much more powerful than using input box and message box. It allows you to create a very professional looking environment. Unfortunately, it's fairly tedious to go through and create a large user form. Well, let's get started. All right, so today I want to build a dialog box, a user form, that will allow me to collect these 5 fields: name, employee ID, department, and department comes from a list. There's a list back here on the list sheet. I want them to choose from one of those. Salary versus hourly, and then if the department is manufacturing, then I want to ask which shift 1, 2, or 3. So we're going to build a dialog box for all of that. Of course, this is done in Visual Basic, so we'll switch back to Visual Basic. I'm going to insert, this time, a user form. And we're really going to make use of the properties window here. So I'm going to make this a bit larger so we can see more of the properties window. When we click on something in the user form, we get to see all of the properties associated with that item. For example, right now, it's the user form itself that's selected. And so a couple of properties I want to change. I want to change the name of this to be form employee. And I want to change the caption. I mean, that's really a bad title, user form 1. So I want to click here in caption and say employee details. All right. Now we always start with a user form that seems to be this default size and shape, but you can always resize it as necessary, make it smaller or larger. Okay, looking in Excel, the first thing we want to ask is the employee name. So that's going to require 2 things. It's going to require a text box where they can enter the employee name. So in the control toolbox here, I click on text box and draw a nice little box where they're going to be able to enter the employee name. Of course, we have to tell them what this box is for, and so I'm going to use the label. The label is the large letter A, and I'll draw a label right next to this text box. Okay, try and get those lined up a little bit. All right, label 1, not very imaginative, so we're going to change the caption there to say employee name, space, and I want that to be right aligned. So we click on employee name and text align. You'll see that there's a drop down here, and I say align right. Okay, this text box, they gave us a name of text box 1, and we can always change that. So I'm going to call it TB, TB standing for text box, employee name. All right, and so there's our first set of controls. Now, the next thing I want to ask about is employee ID, and I like the size of these controls, so once I get the first ones built, I click on employee name, click on the text box, and now that I've selected both of these, I'm going to control drag down, and we'll have a second set of places to enter things. Here, the employee name, I'm going to change to employee ID. And then here, we'll change the name of this to be text box ID. All right, so our first 2 sets of controls are in. Next, we want to ask for department. All right, well, department is going to be choosing from a list. So I'm going to control drag the employee ID down, change that to say department, and I can left align that one a little bit smaller. And for the department, we're going to use a list box. Now, there's 2 controls here that are similar, a combo box and a list box. A list box presents items from a list. A combo box also presents items from a list, but it allows you to type a new value in. I don't want them to type any new values in, so I'm going to draw my list box here. That's probably a good size. We'll test it after we populate it. All right, now with this list box, I know that I always want to come from the lists worksheet. So there's something here called row source, and I'll say lists, exclamation point A1, A9, and click out. And you see that I get my list of departments. Now that I see how many departments are there. I can make it just the right size. I don't necessarily want a scroll bar, so just large enough so we get the scroll bar. And let's call this, instead of list box 1, let's call it LB department, list box department. All right. You're gonna have to remember all of these, so you might want to jot them down as you go. All right, let's see what's next. Next is salary versus hourly. Well, it'd be really nice if we had a option button for salary versus hourly. Now, in this particular user form, there's only going to be one set of option buttons, so we don't necessarily have to create the frame, but I'm going to do it just in case you ever have multiple option buttons. I'm going to draw a large frame here, and the caption is going to be employee type, and then within that frame I'm going to draw a couple of option buttons. All right, option button 1, and then I'll control drag to create the second one. So the first one is called salary, and the second one is called hourly. Now, option buttons are set up so that way only one can be selected. Only one can be selected at a time, and this frame defines that these two option buttons are in a group. If I would have another question that needed an option button, I would want to put them in a new frame, so that way one option button in this frame can be selected, and then one option button in the next frame can be selected. Let's go ahead and name this. We'll call it option salary, and then this one we'll call option hourly. All right, next. We have this question of what shift they're on. Okay, now shift, I'm going to show you how to use a spin button. A spin button is a great way for numeric entries. I'll draw a spin button in here. And the spin button, our shift choices are 1, 2, or 3. So my min here is going to be 1, and my max is going to be 3. Now next to the spin button I need to have a label, and the label is going to show me which value they selected. Alright, so we're going to add a couple of labels in here. This label will be for the answer to the spin button, so we're actually going to change this to be LAB shift, and I don't want anything in there right now. We're going to control that programmatically, and then to the left I'll add a little tag here. Again, control drag to say shift, and we'll right align that one. Okay, we're almost done drawing all of the controls in. We now need a couple of buttons at the bottom, OK and cancel. So I'll click on the command button, draw the first one in, change the caption to OK, and then make an identical copy. So again, control click and drag to create cancel. All right, so let's take a look. Employee details, employee name, employee ID. Choose a department, choose an employee type, and then come down here to the spin button. Now I want to pay attention to something called tab sequence. It's actually called tab index, and we want to make sure that the tab index as we go through is in the appropriate sequence. So the first one had a tab index of 0, the next one has a tab index of 2, and then a tab index of 5, and then this one will have a tab index of 6, and then a tab index of 7, and then a tab index of 8. Finally, the OK button, tab index of 10, that's higher, that's good, and 11. We just want to make sure that all of those have a logical flow. That way, as they hit the tab key, it will go through. The tab index is just notorious for being problematic and not coming up in the right order. So you always want to just check that at the end and get them all in the correct tab sequence. Okay, well now we have to write the programming code behind this form. The one that I always do first is the cancel button because it's the easiest to do. And so I always attack the cancel button first. I'm going to right click on cancel and say view code. And we get something called private sub command button to click. And this is the easiest bit of code. It's just called unload me. Me is the shortcut for the form in which this code is running. So unload me will unload the form. Now let's go back to the form, and we're going to go to the OK button, and view code here. All right, so we need to find the next row on the data sheet. So next row is equal to worksheets data dot cells rows dot count comma 1 dot end xl up dot row plus 1, and then write the values from this form to that row, and then unload the form. All right. Well, in column A, so worksheets, let's actually use with worksheets data dot cells next row comma 1 dot value is going to be equal to the name that they typed in. So we type me dot, and there'll be a list of all controls here. We had a text box, employee name. All right, so that I'll take whatever they typed into the employee name field and write it out to column 1. For the next one, we had employee ID. So me dot text box ID. In the third column, we're going to write the department, and that was a list box. So dot cells next row comma 3 dot value equals me dot list box department dot value. We'll return the selected value. Okay, now we have to look at those option buttons. If me dot option hourly equals true, then to the fourth row, or to the fourth column, we're going to write hourly. Otherwise, we will write salary. And end if. And then finally, we want to take the value from the spin button. Let's go take a look at that spin button. I'm not sure I changed the name for that. Nope, spin button 1. So we'll call that SB for spin button, and shift, SB shift. So view code, we'll go right back to where we need to be, and dot cells next row comma 5 dot value equals me dot SB shift dot value. All right, that writes all of the values out to the worksheet, and with. And you actually have a couple of choices here. Choice number 1 is that they enter 1 employee and then they're done, and that's when we would unload me. Choice number 2 would be that we would clear out all of the values in the form and leave the form open, so that way they can start to enter the next employee. We'll leave this the way it is. Okay, we still have a few things that we need to program. The shift is using a spin button, and every time that this spin button changes, I want to change this label, the label called lab shift. So I'm going to right click on the spin button and say view code, and it's saying every time that spin button changes, then I want to update me.lab shift is equal to me.sb shift dot value. All right, so I mean, you would think, you would just take it for granted that you have a spin button and a label and somehow they'd be tied to each other, but they're not. Every time that someone changes this, we have to write the value out there to the spin button. And when we first display the form, we need to initially display that label. So that runs in a bit of code. Here, we'll come back to the code window, and I'm going to go to user form, and instead of click, I'm going to use initialize. This is the bit of code that gets run when we first display the form. And so I'm going to say me.sbShift.value is equal to 1. And so that forces a change to sbShift, which will force this bit of code to run, and it'll cause that label to appear. All right, so our form is ready to roll. We've added basically 5 sets of controls, 2 buttons, and they're all programmed. They're ready to go. All we need is a way to display this form. And what is very frustrating is that that code cannot live inside the form. At this point, we have to go Insert Module. And so we have Module 1 here, and I'll create a new subroutine called Show Employee Form. And it's one line of code. It's called Form Employee .show. All right, and so we can come back here. Let's take a look at our macros. Show employee form. Let's make this be Control E and cancel. All right, so let's test it. Our first test here. Control E. The form appears. Salary and Shift 2. Okay, notice that the shift is not appearing. So we'll click OK to test. Employee ID is not getting written back out. The employee name is wrong. Oh, wow, just pretty much horrible. Okay, let's view code. We'll fix a couple of things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This should have been 2. Good. So that's going to write the ID back out. In the user form initialize, I had hoped that by setting this value that we would update the label. Apparently that's not working. So actually I'm going to copy this line of code. me.labShift equals me.labShift.value. Excellent. And let's give that a test. We'll get rid of this test here and Control E. All right, so Belgellin for executive salary Shift 1. Click OK. All right, so there's the name, there's the employee ID, there's the department, salary, Shift 1. Let's try another one. In accounting, hourly, second shift. Click OK. All right, there we go. So it's going to the next row. Everything looks good. Now let's get a little bit more advanced here. Remember I said that I wanted the shift to only be available if we chose manufacturing here. And so I'm going to right click on the list box and say View Code. And we get a brand new program. Every time that they click this, it's not when they click it, it's that they change it. So every time we change this, I'm going to say if me.listboxDepartment.value is equal to manufacturing, then, and I'm going to take those 3 items, the spin button shift dot visible is equal to true, me.labShift dot visible is equal to true, and then also the other label, I'm not sure the name of that, so let's go back and check. Here it's label 4. Okay, not a good name, but it'll work. me.label4.visible is equal to true. And if they choose anything else, anything other than manufacturing, I want to make all of those not visible. So false, 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 and if. All right, so anytime we change the department, I'm going to come in here and decide if I should make the shift items visible or not. And to start out in the user form initialize, I'm going to make them invisible. So down here, I will initially hide those. Okay, so let's see how that's working. Press Control E. spelled visible. And up here. All right, let's see if I misspelled anything else. Debug, compile. Yep. There. Debug, compile. All right, so we're good. Press Control E. All right, and you see now the shift is not there. So I put in someone's name, type in employee ID, choose accounting, choose salary, fine. If I come up here and choose manufacturing, then the shift becomes visible. So this is how we can hide and unhide elements of the user form. If we really wanted to, we could change the height and width of the user form. We could change the top of the OK and cancel buttons and make that gap disappear. So as you start to look at various dialog boxes built into Excel, you'll see things come and go. And lots of times that is the code behind the form making that item available or not available. So we have a very robust dialog box tool here that can allow us to create very complex custom dialogues that really add a touch of professionalism to your project. Just be aware that every control probably needs two things: a label and the control. At the end, when they click the OK button, you're going to log each of those items back out to the worksheet. You also might have a situation where you have to load some of those things as we come into the user form and the user form initialize. You can get as fancy as you want here. Sometimes before clicking OK, you would go through and make sure that everything was selected, and if not, have a little message area down here that would be a label. You would say, no, I'm not going to accept this record. You have to fix this piece. And so you can spend as much time as you want. Using user forms, again, really adds a touch of professionalism to your project. This is great when you're writing an application for someone else to use. You can allow them to go through and really have control over what they can enter and what they can't enter. Very time consuming. I know when I'm writing code, it's my least favorite thing to go through and create the user forms. I usually try and find someone else to do that for me, but definitely a very interesting way to go. Well, in the next lesson, we're going to start to talk about error handling. Again, if we're allowing someone else to run our macros, we want to be able to handle unexpected things, because people always find out the strangest way to do something. So in lesson 46, we'll talk about error handling. This was lesson 45, user forms. I hope you found this lesson helpful.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than live lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.